could witness the scent of images of the dying and the stronger smells of decaying corpses. When the pediatrician returns home to her Palestinian American roots in the U.S., she may want to enter the bathtub and soak for at least 4 minutes in lavender lips and salts to allay her professional and personal reactions at seeing the helpless generation die in front of her eyes. She offers no explanatory words for the surreptitious snapshots she takes. We need to see the images themselves. That's it. Here's a sillier one. It's not silly, but it sounds silly. I love Magna Carta. I didn't see the Magna Carta when it was in Boston because it's now more important than ever as a guide, helping us regain what we are in danger of losing. The Magna Carta, written in iron gall ink on parchment, is where our civil rights are derived. Our federal and state constitutions, the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence, all look to the struggles of nobles and the populace to free themselves from the tyranny of English monarchs. What is happening to our civic rights, I ask? Officials are depriving immigrants and increasing our own citizenry of our basic rights of peaceful protest and freedom of speech and access to education. Trump has appointed a Secretary of Education who promised to end access to free public education for future voters, as well as access to public media resources for children. I fear that slowly we will forget what it was like to have free discourse, and we will no longer demand what was once bedrock to America and being American: freedom to pursue life's dreams in an unfettered way. Next time Magna Carta comes to Boston, I will make a point of camping out beside it and shouting its praises.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for always speaking right from your heart. Just opening our hearts. Next, Marky Rana is going to do Old Mother Hubbard.
Check, check, check.
Good.
like that just follow you around your day? And like just turn into music, these things? This picture. Life would be so much better. So Karen Henry is going to be our next person up, and she's going to share introductory songs.
Yes. Is this up? You can hear me, right? I've taken 2 trips to Nicaragua to Dulce Nombre. The first one was 8 years ago, and the second one was just back in February. And when I was thinking about going again in February, I found myself writing what I call Nicaraguan psalms. And the first, so I'm going to read 3 of these. The first 2 are connected to each other. But the first one was about an experience that we had on our first trip when Julie Rogers was on the delegation. And one of the things that we do when we go to Nicaragua is we visit the people who are sick and the older people in the village. And we went to visit a family with a grandmother, Rosa, her grandson, Saul, and her daughter, Michele. And Saul is someone, at that time he was about 13 years old, born with cerebral palsy, so stricken from birth. And when we went into the house, Rosa was sitting in the middle of the room, and Saul was draped across her lap, and she was stretching his arms to keep him from seizing. And it was such a scene. And Michele was standing, Michele, not much older than Saul, she was, I think, 21 at the time, was standing, and she had a broken arm, which is kind of strange, and here she was supposed to be helping with this whole scene. But it was so moving, and Julie led us in a prayer. We circled this group and led us in a prayer, and the poem talks about that moment. It's called Witness. I was not ready to see the 3 figures cut out of time like a sculpture hewn from dark stone, but moving. Rosa, the old woman, stretching the arms of the young man, draped across her lap, a living Pietà. Saul, stricken from birth, the young woman, Michele, stalwart, standing by, ready to aid grandmother or nephew, her arm in a sling. We circled them, feeling the opening of the moment. Light shone on the face of Rosa. Light shone from her face. The minister prayed with us, saying we could see the face of God when we looked at the face of Rosa, who looked at the face of Saul. Michele, bending over both, like an acolyte, a torchbearer. We, witness to unconditional love we could barely fathom. So 8 years later, back again, we visit this same family. And Rosa is there, much older at this point. Michele is now 29, and Saul is 21. So they've grown. And we were visiting them and singing hymns. We sung a lot of hymns that time. We didn't pray as much. We sang a lot of hymns, and they all loved it. But I couldn't help but remind Michele that when I saw her back 8 years ago, she had her arm in a sling. Her arm was broken. And at that moment, and Michele is now almost the total caretaker of Saul, because Rose is too old to really take care of him. So that's what she does. Day and night, she takes care of Saul. And she broke into the story of how she broke her arm. And she became incredibly alive. So that's what this one's about. Inner life. When I first saw Michele, 21 years old, with her nephew Saul, just 8 years younger and stricken from birth with cerebral palsy, I mourned her precious life, confined to his care. Her mother was too old to devote every waking moment to him after his mother, her other daughter, abandoned him. I saw her again years later and reminded her that she had a broken arm when I first met her. She leapt into the story of that time as if she were a brilliant comedian. On her face, a dazzling play of expressions, in command of her audience. Inspired by the film The Fast and the Furious, which is a film about car chasing and stealing cars and things like that, she said with a wink, she took a thrill ride on her bike, careening down a hill. No brakes, she laughed. Skirting a ditch, she was catapulted over the handlebars by a rock in her path. Her family's eyes were on her. In horror, her sister cried, "She's killed herself!" Laughing, McKaylee said she stood up, pretending all was well, until she looked at her hand. Here, she held it up for us and showed the fingers twisting in 5 crazy directions. Storyteller, tending to Saul day and night, alive in wild imagination. And the last one is a little lighthearted. We went down to the river and we were swimming in the river, and to get out of the river, you had to climb up this very kind of rocky path. But that's what I was doing, and I'll read what happens next. It's called Pastora Dries My Feet, and actually I will pass around a picture of this moment that Anita captured, so you can quickly pass it around. Pastora dries my feet. Here I am, 70, but I jump in the river like a kid, t-shirt and shorts. I want to be part of it, even the game of tag, though I fear being it forever. This river, source of hope and dread, bringing life to the corn or beating it down now that weather has changed and the river become inscrutable. It is calm today, sun glinting off silver ripples as we swim and play. I climb to the bank on a stony path and find a perch, take off my flip-flops and start to dry my feet. Pastora, proud of daring her 5-year-old, diving in the river like a dolphin, can take her eyes off him to run over to me. She wipes my sandy feet dry and doesn't stop there. She shimmies on my socks and proudly pushes on my tight shoes despite my protest and embarrassed laugh. She even ties those shoes. Later, Anita shows me the photo of us and I cringe. You can tell she looks after children. Still later, Kathy hears the story. That's what they do, leap to what they see is needed.
Thank you, Karen, for your words. So, words are what Byron is going to bring to us next. And we'll see what happens with that.
I've been surrounded by animals. Oh, see one here everywhere. I hope that. Thanks. I've been around the animals all the time, and I think about all the strange characteristics they have. But there's one thing that always struck me about penguins, and they're always kind of a bit awkward to me. Then I finally realized it. They can never break the ice. But besides that, I wanted to let you know they are very clever animals, because we've all heard about Trump's crazy plans to colonize different countries, deport people without a hurt, and all these tariffs against even people where only penguins wins, and then came by these plans to deport things. But hey, that's not going to scare them, because they've been dealing with ice for far longer than Trump has. A man was talking to his wife. He said, I'm going to build a very, very large model of Everest, Mount Everest. He said, is it going to be so large that it's to scale? And he said, no, it's just to look at. You know, I mean, I know in the past we've always sold water and cookies outside and on Patriots Day when we have all those runners going by and those helped it. I am a bit concerned for having it near the biggest, the most famous running event in the world. So that's one place where people definitely take it and run. Okay, let's see where am I? Knock, knock. Who's there? spelled? Okay, WHO. Doctor. Bison. Buy some Girl Scout cookies, please. Okay, we all know that April showers bring Mayflowers. Well, what do Mayflowers bring? Pilgrims, there you go. Now we've all done that, dance the YMCA. You might have weddings and other good events. And you might find that a bit embarrassing, but whoever said you should put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you can just be relieved that you don't have to be doing the YMCA in China. Can you imagine how bad that would be? The YMCA in Chinese. I don't know how they do that there. Okay. So let's see. Despite what you want to know, some people want, I want the global warming, that we're all concerned. We can tell all the terrible signs of global warming, all the droughts and whatnot, and all the floods, and all the other horrific events going on there. But if you're really worried about all those floods around, then don't worry, just give me a call. Because you might want to have to, when they have to build an ark. But if you give me a call, I'll help you out, because I know a guy who can build one. There was this police on Monday, Pope was visiting this new city, and the capital city of a foreign country. And he, after being driven around for so long, he'd seen this beautiful limousine. He's convinced the driver to let him drive. And so he was a bit out of touch, so he kind of swerved, cut some people off, kept on driving. He was driving so fast, after being out of practice, he actually drove up onto a sidewalk. So of course the police officer went over and stopped him. He took one look in the window, looked a bit pale, just waved him on. And his companion said, "Well, why didn't you stop him? You didn't even say anything to him? Just let him go on?" "Well, who is that in that car?" And he said like a elected official, a secretary of state. And he said, "That I don't know, but whoever's in that car is so powerful that he uses the Pope for his driver." Thank you very much.
All right, Austin is going to come up by himself at first and then do a duet. We'll let him introduce anything about Ride on King Jesus and what follows.
Hello.
Yeah. So, the first piece that I'd like to do is Ride on King Jesus. And it's a traditional spiritual. And there was a really beautiful performance that Kathleen Battle and, forgetting her name, anyway, there were two sopranos and they did a really wonderful concert. I believe it was at Carnegie Hall of spirituals. And this was one of the arrangements. And I'm not sure who arranged it. I just kind of put together kind of an ad hoc arrangement of it based off of that recording because I didn't have the music for it. But and I performed it at a few different churches. But this is Ride on King Jesus, and then after this we have the grand finale with Julian, which is T-Rex by Sandra Boynton.
I'd be stood up here.
Maybe a train sound, you might come back.
All right, here we go. Gonna come out?
T-Rex, T-Rex, take it up. T-Rex, T-Rex. So many T-Rex and every T-shirt, T-Rex, black and glasses. These are the facts. Look in the mirror, what do I see? King of the world looking back at me. T-Rex. Say it again. T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus. Tyrannosaurus. Oh yeah. T-Rex. I like this one. T-Rex. Catch it. Here we go. I'm a T-Rex. Gotta stomp around. I'm a T-Rex. Gonna shake the ground. Like I said it now, like I said it before. Nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. Yeah, nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. T-Rex. Friendly guy, like to shake your hand, but I can't reach. You understand? I'm bigger than life, no structural hurts. I can call you whatever. You can call me Rex. T-Rex. T-Rex. I'm a T-Rex, gotta stomp around. I'm a T-Rex, gonna shake the ground. I said it now, like I said it before. Nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. Yeah, nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. T-Rex.
When everyone should be dancing.
Tiny guy with a Panama hat, purple shades, what's up with that? Uptown visitor, we can dance and go look at me. I'm for dancing, I can't try. Okay for him, I'm not that guy. I'm a T-Rex, I'm a T-Rex, gotta shake the floor. I'm a T-Rex, gotta stomp around. I'm a T-Rex, gotta take the ground. Let's go. Stomp around. Stomp right, shake it, now, oh yeah, stomp right. Put your hands in the air. Just kidding. Tiny little arms, great big head, a million teeth. Like I said, white t-shirt, crayon slacks, black frame glasses. These are the facts. The facts. I look in the mirror, what do I see? King of the world looking back at me. T-Rex. T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus. Big smile out the door. I'm a T-Rex, gotta stomp around. I'm a T-Rex, gonna shake the ground. Like I said it now, like I said it before. And nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. Yeah, nobody moves like Tyrannosaurus. Yeah, nobody moves like me.
Yeah, this does make me think about how we should have some songs that are participation, right? And especially when we have young people who are potentially willing to be involved in these, we should definitely make these sing-alongs. But okay, we don't just love you as much as a T-Rex, this much, right? We are really happy you're here, and as you know, this we're getting ready to do an intermission to grab some good food. And this is also the time that we're going to ask that you support the Hermanamiento, which is near and dear to all of our hearts. This year, as Karen was saying, we were down again in February and visiting with everybody in Dulce Nombre and in Antroculturas. And Antroculturas this year is really wanting to get involved with new programs and formation with Dulce Nombre de Jesus. And they have a lot of really wonderful ideas and things that might help us as well, that would reach us as well as Dulce Nombre. And so when you support this event with donations, it's both for delegations and it's also for the programs that Entre Culturas is doing with like almost no money whatsoever, but piecing things together. So it really makes a huge difference and we really appreciate what you donate. There is a basket over by food and there is a basket that we'll pass around and everything is really appreciated. Thank you. Ask pretty much anybody if you have questions about the sister relationship. Thank you.
My mom
That's what I was gonna say.
Wendy, that was really good.
Oh, yeah. Without a beer.
My 11-year-old neighbor, when he was 10, oh, I won't be able to find the picture, but I'll find it. He was Frederick Douglass in school. They did a character thing, and he picked Frederick Douglass. But I'll tell you, he was like a very small Frederick Douglass, and he was really very, he was very into it. Oh, that's exciting. This is relative. And then there's the Gonzalo, too. Oh, I see. Okay. Remember, I was at the service after this last year, and so I heard the and I said, and then Karen approached me, and I said, no, but I can fish you. And she said, no. And so then I said to God, so here we are. I don't think it's going to happen. Well, you never know. Well, it wasn't raining. I got a lot of t-shirts. I'm into colors. Well, yeah, and I asked them because I really wanted to visit these guys. No, and we have Rose
You're pivoted very well.
Were you pleased with your well, if you don't write it up, you won't have it. You gotta be able to figure out
Sit. Stay there. I don't care.
Sorry, Jim, he's like this. You get up and he wants to take your chair. You don't need to take it.
Just pass them a hat. I don't know if anybody.
We were here. Somebody came.
Okay. Thank you.
Turn around. Oh, it's beautiful. Both of you. Yeah, absolutely got
I walked after somebody's program. No, but instead of the actual set. I did know that I joined it. I haven't someone. No, in the summer solstice itself, our celebration. I know, sorry, cross a base.
I got about half of the jokes. The ones I got were really funny.
the best call back to yourself. So we know that people like to get home at a reasonable hour, so we're going to head to the last several gigs that we've got going on here. So Anita and Barbara are going to shower us with two tangos by Carlos Gardel, arranged for two violins by Diego Palazzi. So sit and enjoy.
I wanted to pick something that was sort of related to Nicaragua. These are from Argentina, and I happened to find this book with violin duets of tangos. So something new for us to enjoy. And I learned a little bit about Carlos Gardel. It was kind of just before the famous Astor Piazzolla. And Piazzolla met Gardel when he was maybe a 14-year-old boy. He was a great bandoneon.
There might be people watching on YouTube.
Oh,
There might, yeah, and I realize we didn't mention this in case anybody doesn't know that there might be someone watching this on YouTube.
okay.
So that's why it's good to have the, they're on. Okay, a couple people are watching, so it's good to use the microphone.
Yes, so Astor Piazzolla, the famous, who made Nuevo Tango, something different than the traditional tango, met the young Gardel, who was a great bandoneon player, the Argentinian accordion, and invited him to go on a tour with him, with Piazzolla. But Gardel's father prohibited him, said he's just a boy, he can't go on this tour. But it so happens that it was a good thing that he was prohibited from going on the tour because something tragic happened. And there was a plane crash, and Gardel and a bunch of other people. He died at the age of 44. So Carlos Gardel, he's originally born in France, changed his name. So first we're going to play Melodia de Arrabal and then Por una Cabeza. The traveling musicians.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay, how's that possible? So complex, but so interesting. When you hear them play, don't you just feel like violin is the best instrument in the world?
Yes.
Gorgeous. All right, we're going to hear from another church member about amazing life experiences. Anne, where are you? Are you going to stand? Do you want to sit?
No, stand.
Okay.
Many of you know that apart from Sarah and I worked in Zimbabwe in the early 80s with United Church of Christ of Zimbabwe down in the southeastern part of the country, just across from Mozambique. And piece that I've been working on a memoir for the last 100 years or so. Eventually I'll finish it. But the piece I'm reading tonight is about an experience I had during that time. We were there from January 82 to December 84. So this is called A Return to South Africa, and you'll see why, 1983. On a cold day in August 1983, I found myself sitting on the floor in the middle of a boisterous crowd in Cape Town, South Africa. During the August school vacation, I was a teacher in Zimbabwe. Seizing on the opportunity to get a ride with friends all the way to Johannesburg, I went there to visit some people I'd never met, but who were friends of friends in the anti-apartheid activist community. This was my third visit to South Africa, and it turned out to be the most interesting and informative. My first visit there was in 1966, when, as an undergraduate in the U.S., I participated in a church-sponsored travel study seminar through 10 African countries, where we met with young people and church and civic leaders and community activists. A major focus of that 2-month seminar had been to deepen our understanding of how newly independent African countries were coping with their new realities, and how the countries of Southern Africa were still trying to liberate themselves from deeply entrenched white supremacist regimes. Our group had spent a week in and around Johannesburg, but we hadn't ventured any further. My second trip to South Africa took place a few months after our arrival in Zimbabwe in 1982, when I went to Durban to pick up a car we had ordered with a discount from Germany. That time I got a ride with friends to Masvingo, that's a city in southern Zimbabwe, and hitchhiked the 500 miles from there to Johannesburg, where I caught a train to Durban. Looking back on that 3,000-mile journey, which took less than a week round trip, I wonder what possessed me to take such a risk hitchhiking alone over such a distance. I remember now that time was very limited, as were travel options. Time and expense ruled out traveling by plane or train. We were talking about that little coal-powered train. And the policies of the apartheid government ruled out my traveling by bus, because white people could not travel on African buses with black people. So hitchhiking was a last resort. And I was fortunate to have made the journey safely with just 3 long-distance rides, all of which afforded opportunities to converse with strangers who represented diverse backgrounds. These included 2 black Zimbabwean men, a white Afrikaans-speaking truck driver, and an English-speaking South African who was grumbling about having to serve in the army all the time. Upon my arrival in Johannesburg on this 3rd trip, I learned that the people I was visiting were preparing for the national launch rally of the United Democratic Front to be held later that week in Cape Town. So I continued my journey by car with this group all the way to the tip of the continent. The liberation movements had established their bases of operation outside the country in the 1960s. And several of their leaders, including Nelson Mandela, had long been imprisoned or exiled, if not killed. But a new generation had stepped up to continue the internal struggle as others worked from the outside. The United Democratic Front was the latest. As more and more people squeezed into the overflowing auditorium, I pulled up and hugged my knees on the concrete floor, taking up as little space as possible. There were more than 1,000 people on the inside, delegates representing 575 organizations and thousands more outside, 10 to 15,000 altogether. I tried not to think about the heavily armed South African police surrounding the event. What would it take to provoke them into action? It was an unsettling thought, but I got caught up in the enthusiasm of the throng as we listened to the Reverend Alan Bussack, Frank Chikane, and many others who were active in the religious, labor, youth, women's, and community organizations that were present. The UDF played a significant role in helping to end apartheid in the following years. A grassroots organization, it was a training ground for many leaders who eventually occupied senior positions in the South African government after the first democratic elections in 1994. It occurred to me as I sat listening to those speakers on August 20th, 1983, and almost exactly 20 years earlier, I had sat on the grass next to the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C., after walking up Constitution Avenue with my Uncle Tom and Aunt Peggy Cleveland, and about 100 other Southern Presbyterians who marched to challenge our church to take a stronger stand for civil rights. Sitting in the sweltering heat, we listened to speakers at the Lincoln Memorial, including Dr. Martin Luther King and the fiery young John Lewis, call for a more equitable and just society in the United States. After the rally, we were walking back to our starting point and were in the vicinity of the White House when Dr. King's entourage passed us on their way to meet with President Kennedy. When he saw the Presbyterians U.S., that's the Southern Presbyterians banner we carried, Dr. King told his driver to stop, and he got out and thanked us for marching. It was a heady experience for this 17-year-old. The parallels between the civil rights movement in the U.S. and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa were strikingly clear. I thought about my dad, who had been declared a prohibited immigrant by the South African government because of his vocal opposition to apartheid as he worked with student Christian movements around the continent in the 1960s. He had also received death threats in the U.S. during those years as he traveled around the South and urged churches to support movements for racial justice in both the U.S. and Southern Africa. It was the summer of 1964, dubbed Freedom Summer by civil rights activists. And young volunteers had spread across the American South, registering voters in the face of violence and intimidation by the KKK and other white supremacists. Dad was addressing the annual conference of the National Student Christian Federation in Chicago, where many of those in attendance had been involved in voter registration or other aspects of the civil rights movement. I was not at that gathering, but I heard about it much later from friends who were inspired by Dad's speech. If you care about civil rights in the United States, he admonished, you also have to care about what's happening in Southern Africa, because the U.S. is on the wrong side of every single struggle that's going on right now. I don't know if he was aware of the extent to which Jim Crow practices in the U.S. had inspired apartheid, the rigid system of racial segregation implemented in South Africa in 1948, but he certainly saw the parallels. South Africa's Bantu homelands also mirrored the American policy of relegating the indigenous people in the U.S. to reservations after their land was taken by white settlers. Dad's speech at the meeting of the National Student Christian Federation had inspired a number of conference attendees to get involved in anti-apartheid work in the U.S. And as I got to know some of these people, they drew me into the movement that would become a major focus for me in the next few decades. I felt a special bond with Dad that day at the UDF rally in Cape Town as I thought about how the spark he had lit in me had had such a strong influence on my life, and I longed to talk to him again. He was far too young, just short of 49, when cancer had taken him from us.
And I hope you keep sharing these, even if we don't have Cabaret. So we only get like one dose a year in this case, which is not enough. So next up, we have Nancy and Barbara performing This Is My Maker's World. and invite him up.
In honor of Juneteenth, Holly and I will portray two historic figures who came together in a time of national turmoil when our country was at risk. This sketch is based on a book by Suzanne Slade called Friends for Freedom, Susan B. Anthony, and Frederick Douglass.
No one thought that we would become friends.
I was born in 1820 in a two-story home with polished wood floors.
I was born in 1818 in a one-room cabin with floors made of clay.
My parents taught me to read before I started school.
I secretly taught myself to read because enslaved people were not allowed to go to school. When we were growing up, it wasn't proper for women to be friends with men, and you weren't supposed to be friends with someone whose skin was a different color than yours.
In the fall of 1849, I quit teaching and moved home to our family farm near Rochester, New York. Before I even unpacked my bags, I hopped back into the horse-drawn wagon and went straight into town. Why, you ask? I couldn't wait to meet the man my father talked so much about. The man who made a daring escape from slavery, gave eloquent speeches about equality, and stood up for women.
That day, in 1849, I was so surprised to see you at my door. They say my smile could have lit up all of Alexander Street. I had heard quite a bit about you, the women's suffrage leader who gave powerful speeches about equality. You weren't afraid to complain that male teachers were paid 4 times more than women to do the same job. I invited you into the house and brewed up a pot of my finest tea. Imagine how surprised my family was to see you and your father.
We had a lively conversation. We both hated slavery and thought one person should never own another. We believed that women deserved the same rights as men, to own land, to go to college, and vote.
We weren't afraid to stand up for our beliefs. In fact, we each loved a good fight. So we decided to fight for equal rights for African Americans and women together.
So you may be wondering, would this odd friendship last?
People made fun of us when we went out together to give speeches. People thought it wasn't right for a black man and a white woman to be seen together in public.
But we didn't care what other people said. We kept working together and speaking together for equal rights. Everyone deserves to be treated the same.
We went to a lot of nearby towns and gave a lot of speeches and made a lot of enemies. There were people willing to do anything to stop us. Some angry people threw rotten eggs at us.
Reporters wrote nasty stories, saying that we were like a terrible sickness, a deadly smallpox, a horrible plague.
I will never forget the time in 1861 when we went to New York's capital, Albany, to speak out against slavery. We brought some of our other friends to speak too.
The meeting hall was packed with people. But it soon became clear that many wanted to scare us away. They were loud, and fistfights broke out in the audience.
At one point, the mayor took out his gun, put it on his lap, and said that he didn't want any trouble. Despite the distractions, we kept speaking.
4 years later, the 13th Amendment finally ended slavery. We celebrated, but got right back to work.
In 1869, after the end of the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was passed. I was thrilled. Many were shocked. It gave black men the right to vote, but not women. There was a big uproar in the country.
I was furious. It was a big fight between the two of us.
I insisted that it is a matter of life and death for black men to be able to vote.
Women must sit back and wait.
It was a fierce argument. Our debate went on in public for some time.
We did keep listening to each other despite our disagreements. We realized that we could disagree and still be friends.
We stopped fighting each other and were soon fighting side by side again.
The final chapter in the story of our friendship began in 1872 when Frederick's house in Rochester was burned by arsonists who didn't want African Americans living in town.
I was away on business at the time, and my wife and children barely escaped. We lost everything: books, furniture, and even farm animals. We were homeless.
I tried to encourage you to stay in Rochester, hoping you'd rebuild.
My family decided to move to Washington, D.C. to fight for equality where the laws were made. We promised each other to stay close.
Separated by hundreds of miles, we wrote each other long letters. I always started my dear old friend.
I signed my letters to you, yours for the freedom of man and woman, always.
We read about each other in the newspapers. Sometimes we traveled to give speeches together.
We took trains to conventions where we spoke. Our friendship stayed as strong as ever.
Our friendship lasted for over 45 years. Together, we saw many of our dreams come true.
No one thought that the two of us would become friends, but it was a strong friendship based on mutual respect and passion to enshrine rights for all citizens.
Our last day together was February 20th, 1895. We were at a women's rights meeting in Washington, D.C.
We walked onto the stage, arm in arm, to a standing ovation. Then we enjoyed each other's company all afternoon on stage as the meeting progressed.
That night, Frederick died of a heart attack in his home. A few days later, I gave one of the most difficult speeches of my life, a eulogy at his funeral.
Susan passed away 11 years later at the age of 86. She did not live to see women receive the right to vote. That was to come with the 19th Amendment in 1920.
Today you can see a sculpture in Rochester, New York called Let's Have Tea. It's by sculptor Patsy M. Catabon, and it features larger-than-life figures of Susan and Frederick sharing a pot of tea and warm conversation.
Thank you so much for that. Wendy, were you going to make an announcement?
Yes, I was.
Okay, do you want to do that now before Theodore takes us out with some music? It's related, right, to what we just heard?
Yes, very good.
Okay. We're just going to come right over here. So while we're milling all what we just heard, there's an announcement, and then Theodore will take us out with some flute.
We in Boston have the unusual privilege of watching an opera about Frederick Douglass his last year. It's being performed by the Boston Modern Orchestra Project, BMOP, and Odyssey Opera. Odyssey Opera has won a Grammy for one of its new operas. They're top-notch. And BMOP has players from the BSO, Boston Symphony Orchestra, and other places. It promises to be a beautiful musical event, except that it's also, because it's an opera, it's a story about Frederick Douglass. And I highly recommend it. The thing that's so important, most of all, really, is that they want a full audience in Jordan Hall. And they want it so much that they will ask you to pay the minimum of $15 a ticket to enter this performance. They say recommended $40, but they take the $15 and they give you a ticket. So I would hope that anybody that's free on June 20th, Friday, at 7 o'clock, get to Jordan Hall and maybe get your tickets beforehand, because it might pack up, I don't know. But get there and get a good view of a major Black spokesman with all the details about him. I'd highly recommend it.
Thank you. All right, let's see, are you, where should we, here, okay. And feel free to say anything about this.
Well, we will end with a piece by Georg Friedrich Händel, at least. He was born in Germany, then moved to England, became a very famous composer, so we are ending here with a piece by him, with a Siciliana and an Allegro from one of his sonatas for flute and accompaniment. Händel by Tom Händel, plus a German flutist.
hospitality is awesome. So thanks again for coming. Please finish up whatever food is there and have a beautiful night.
Thank you guys.
And anyone who wants to help clean up is welcome to stay, but maybe less.